We've got three wines this evening, which we're really excited to try. I was just going to say a little bit of background to our introduction to Domaine Glantenay, and then I'll hand over to Sarah, who will talk you through the individual wines. We started working with Domaine Glantenay in the 2017 vintage, so this is about to be our third vintage together. Initially, it was a recommendation from a customer of mine, actually, who said, these wines are brilliant and you should go and see these people because they're making fantastic wine. And so I did. It just so happened I was going to Burgundy, I think, in a couple of weeks after that conversation. And so we managed to get a slot to go and say hello to Sarah. And I thought the wines were brilliant. And then I remember I came back and had a chat with people in the office and by chance was going back again the following month. So we went and saw Sarah again, twice in 2 months, and very quickly it led to a small allocation of the 2017 vintage, which is the one that we're tasting this evening. I think it's a lovely vintage to be tasting tonight because the 17s are open, they're very expressive already. I think they're wines which never really closed down. They were delicious to taste in barrel, and they're a delight right now. The 2019s are obviously the ones that we have released recently. Those, check out our website because they're all available for sale on the website at the moment. Selling fast, actually, so that's good. But all the details, as I say, are on the Glantenay website. So without further ado, I will hand over to Sarah, and she is going to talk us through the three wines. Oh, just very quickly, the Pommard. Some of you have got Pommard 2018, I think, rather than Pommard 2017. We had so little left of the 17 that there was a crossover in vintages there. So Sarah, I think we can maybe talk about both vintages when we get to the Pommard. But over to you.
Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm glad I have the chance to do this despite the situation. I couldn't come and visit for our annual January tasting, but at least we get a backup plan, and I'm glad I'm able to show you the Domaine for some who don't know it yet, and we're going to be able to taste some wines together, so that's great. So I'm going to say a few words about Domaine first, because so it's my brother Guillaume and I who are now running the Domaine for 7 years now. Time goes by. And so we took over from our parents in 14. 14 was our first vintage. And so it's we're not a new Domaine because we're the 5th generation. So it's been a while since we've been making wine in Burgundy. But the Domaine takes its name from my grandfather Georges. So Domaine Georges Glantenay, who decided to keep his name as a comment on dit?
To keep the name of the domaine.
Yeah, as a, comment on dit, pour continuer, garder la mémoire de ce qu'il a fait.
To keep his memory and to keep his influence alive. Presence. Yeah.
So, as a way to honor him, and so we decided to keep his name, and now it's he's gone, but we keep working on developing the name of the Domaine with Georges Glantenay. And then there was my father Pierre, and now it's Guillaume and I. So our parents, they didn't work on the export market much, so most of the people are starting to discover us, so starting to discover us for the last 5 years, because our parents, they mostly sold to private customers, mostly in France, which means our wines didn't travel so much. Not as much as today. It's really rewarding to see that we have some of our bottles all around the world. And so Guillaume and I, since we came back, we really decided to develop the export. But for that, we needed to rebuild the winery to be able to vinify more quantities, to stop selling the grapes. And that's what we are doing now. So almost all of the grapes we produce, we keep for ourselves, we vinify. And now we went from 15,000 bottles to 50,000 bottles. So that's a big improvement. We're really proud of that. And thanks to that, we're able to develop the export and now to send to ship wines all over the world. So that's really rewarding for us. A lot of work, but yeah, it works. So on the appellations we produce, we based in Volnay. We're based in Volnay, so of course Volnay is our main appellation. We have Volnay Village, and we have 4 different Premier Cru in Volnay. Almost 2 hectares of village and 2 hectares of Premier Cru, so that's really good volumes for us. For now, we only produce 3 different Premier Cru because the 4th one we still sell in grapes. But eventually, maybe next year or the year after that, we will stop selling the grapes and be able to offer 4 different Premier Cru Volnay. It's going to be really interesting to show the difference of terroir in one same village, because one village can be already very rich and offer a lot of diversity. And then, of course, we have some vineyards in Pommard as well, which is the next village. So that's that makes sense. We have Pommard Village. We have also 2 Premier Cru in Pommard. And then we have some Chambol-Musigny. That's really our exception in Côte de Nuit. The reason for that is that our father's grandmother was from Chambol-Musigny. So it was a good marriage back then, and thanks to that, now we have a half hectare of Chambol-Musigny Village and a very, very small plot of Chambol-Musigny Premier Cru. We produce 2 barrels, but that's still good to have. So that's it for the reds. And then for the whites, we produce so Bourgogne Chardonnay and Bourgogne Aligoté for the regionals, and then we have some Meursault and Montélimar Premier Cru as well. So basically, we produce 90% reds, but we are really interested in the whites as well and trying to develop with the vineyards we have in the family. What else can I say about the domain? What am I forgetting?
What's always impressed me is that the fact that by chance you have holdings in both Chambol and Volnay, and I think stylistically they have a lot in common. So it's quite interesting to be able to give these 2 very aromatic, very pretty expressions of Pinot Noir, one from the Côte de Nuit and one from the Côte de Beaune. And I always think that's a nice symmetry about the domain.
Yeah, we're really lucky to have ended up with Chambol-Musigny and not Beaune-Romanée or Nuit Saint-Georges, because Chambol-Musigny is always compared to Volnay. It's really elegant and delicate, so it totally makes sense for us to have those 2 appellations. And with the style of the wines we're trying to produce, it totally makes sense. So we're really glad to have some Chambol-Musigny on the wine list. And regarding the vinification process, so of course we pick all the grapes by hand, which lasts about a week, depending on the vintage. And then the grapes, we take them back to the winery. We sort everything. That's really important for us. And then all the grapes, once they are in the vat, we keep them for a week, almost a week, as much as possible, but usually we reach 8 to 9 days of cold pre-fermentation. That's actual fermentation, but just before that, we do a cold pre-fermentation, which allows us to, we don't want the fermentation to start right away, because when we keep it just to infuse with cold temperatures, it allows us to extract the color and the complexity of the aromas. So that's a really important time for us to respect. And then after this week of cold temperatures, the fermentation wants to start, so we stop the cold, and every vat starts the fermentation. And once the fermentation is over, once all the sugars are transformed, we keep again 1 more week in the vat, same, but this time at hot temperatures that were naturally created during the vinification process, the fermentation process. And we just put the top of the vat down. We stop doing any punching down or pumping over. We stop interacting with the vat, and we just leave it infused like a giant tea. And thanks to that, we get the structure, the complexity of the structure and the tannins. But the more we wait and the more delicate and elegant the tannins get. So that's also a very important time for us to respect. So in total, it's about a month of vinification, which is quite long, but it's really necessary. And for us, it's the condition to obtain, to have complexity of aromas, complexity of structure, but still thin, elegant tannins and good balance in the wines. So that's.
Shall we talk a little bit about the 2019 vintage?
Sure.
In that case?
Yeah. So 19, since 15 vintage, we've had quite unusual vintages and more warm vintages, and 19 was a warm vintage. So warm vintage and almost no rain during the whole spring and summer season. So that was a bit tough on the vineyards, especially after 18, which was already hot and quite dry. So we had to be really careful with choosing the date to start the harvest because we really needed to have the balance in the wines. We had the degrees because when it's hot, of course, the degrees are not difficult to reach. But the trick was to also have the deterioration of the acids, and that's we need to have the degrees going up, sugar going up, the acids going down, and to be able to decide when to go in the vineyards at the right moment when there's a good balance in the grapes and the best potential for doing the good wine. So basically we advanced the date of the harvest. We thought about 15th of September, and in the end we started on the 7th of September. And it was really about time for some vineyards like Santenot and Ronceret in Glantenay, which are always quite early, and they really needed to be harvested because it was when you wait too long, it starts to deteriorate the acids, and then it gets really bad, and you have not the balance in the wine that you're looking for. So we had to start the harvest quite early, and now when we see the results, we're really happy that we did. We kept the freshness thanks to the acidity. We don't have too much alcohol, and we have the balance we were looking for. So that's it's going to be a great vintage. And then we did one new experimentation during this vintage on our Chambolle-Musigny Premier Cru Les Phosphates, because it's quite a small cuvée. It's only 2 barrels, as I said. So we decided to try something which we never tried before, but which we think is really interesting and has a lot of potential, especially on the Premier Cru, on our top Premier Cru. We did the vinification intégrale. I don't know if that translates. I don't know how to say it, but like
it's more than a whole bunch of vinification, isn't it? Because it's how do you say it?
It's basically, instead of during the whole vinification process in our vats like we do usually, we do the whole process directly in the barrel.
Yeah, so it's barrel fermentation.
Exactly. Yeah. So we put the whole grapes, of course, but in the barrel. And thanks to that, so we, instead of doing the pumping over or punching down, we can't do that in the barrel, obviously. So the thing is that we just roll the barrels on themselves about 3 times a day. And that's much softer for the grapes. And also it keeps the grapes inside the barrel with inertie carbonique. Carbonic
maceration. Yeah.
Maceration, and so it stays with the carbonic maceration during the whole vinification. We never open the barrel, unlike the vats that we have to open at some point. And so it's softer for the grapes, and it keeps all the potential from the grapes that we have since the beginning. And really, what we say with my brother is that when we do the harvest, we have 100% potential with the grapes, and then our job is to try to keep at the maximum of potential we can until we get to the wine. You know what I mean? So we have 100% grapes, and then we have to be good at our job and try to respect the grapes and to try to keep the most of the potential until it gets to the wine aspect.
Had you experimented with barrel fermentation in previous years, or was that, did you just think, okay, we'll try it this year because it's a riper vintage?
Sorry, guy, you spoke too fast.
Sorry, Sarah. Had you done it? Had you done experiments with barrel fermentation before, or was this something that you tried for the first time?
We tried it for the first time on
okay, that's quite a gamble.
So it would, yeah, gamble, but we take measured risks. We're not, we know and we think about it a lot before we try to do it. And it was so in to end up with our barrel of Fusat. In fact, if you want 1 barrel of juice in the end, you have to make 2 barrels of this of the fermentation with the full grapes. And the quantity, it's 2 barrels during the vinification to end up with 1 barrel of wine in the end. And so we had to adapt our material, our equipment, because it's when you have to roll to reverse the barrel, it's like you can't do it by hand because it's way too heavy. So we had to adapt. But it was only 2 barrels, so it was worth doing it, and the result is very interesting. We think we have more complexity, more concentration thanks to that, and it's yeah, definitely we gained some deepness and also some smoothness, and the barrel itself, the wood, it's really well integrated. It's new oak, of course, but you can't tell it's new oak. It's just so well integrated and balanced, the whole thing. So we're really happy with this experiment we did on this vintage.
And Sarah, it picks up quite nicely on a question someone's put in the chat, which is generally what percentages? Yeah, it's Mr. Wallace. Daniel, good evening. It's what percentage of whole bunches have you generally used in your fermentation?
We don't use any.
Okay.
Easy. We destem all of it. So for now, we destem all of it because our style, what we're looking for is really the freshness, the fruits, something that's really fresh fruit, and the using whole bunches can be really tricky. So for now, with the vintages which are already hot, we decided not to use any, even in the fermentation in the barrel. But maybe in the future we'll also do some experiments on some appellations, some of our cuvée. But for now, all destemmed.
Brilliant. Someone else has asked about the differences, which maybe we'll cover as we go on, but between, if you could compare 17, 18 and 19 in sort of weather terms.
So 17, it was like more, how can I say that, more usual vintage, like it was quite hot during the summer, but that's quite normal for us in Burgundy. But at the same time, we had rain. So in the end, the vineyard grew really fast, that's for sure. It was early, but quite balanced because we had sun, we had water, so good potential. And in the end, we end up with good volume, but good quality of wine, and yeah, good balance and harmony. While in 18, we had the same, maybe even warm, more hot, but no rain this time. That was the issue we had. And it was 18 and 19 the same. It was frustrating because we kept checking the weather forecasts, hoping for rain, and they always said rain in 4 days. And then you check the next day, rain in 4 days. And in the end, it never rained all summer. So I was like, okay. And it's really difficult because you gain a lot of degree, a lot of alcohol in the grapes, but then when it's too hot and you don't have the rain, you have a hydric stress. Yeah. Okay, so that means when you have the stress hydrique, the vineyard just stops the ripening. So you end up with it's gonna concentrate by the lack of water, but not because of the sève. How do you say sève? The sève in the vineyard.
The sap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sap.
Yeah.
So the sap stops because there's no water, so the vineyard needs to focus on the leaves and focus on the roots. So the concentration in the grapes is only going to happen because of the sun is really hot, but it's not going to be balanced. And so that's really what we wanted to avoid. So it's why in 18 we started the harvest on the 27th of August, and in 19 a bit later, because it was of course a different vintage. We started on the 7th of September, but still too early vintage, and we really needed to be careful because it was tricky because the window when we were able to go pick the grapes and really have the most potential, it was a very small window. Usually we know that if we don't do it today because it's too busy, we'll do it tomorrow. While those two vintages, it was really tricky, and yeah, we had to hurry to pick up the grapes.
I think, I guess.
Sorry, no, I was going to say, before we go on to the sort of individual wines, just keeping an eye on the clock, we've got a few questions coming in on the character of the different vintages. So sort of, we've had questions on the 17s, 18s, 19s, and 20s. So I don't know if it might be interesting if you can very quickly just say something about the difference in weather and in character of the wines. I mean, in terms of the 20s, it's obviously very early days. But if you can say something about the differences between the last four vintages.
In terms of taste, you mean?
Well, in terms of weather and how that has impacted on the taste.
Okay.
Or maybe just add 20 to what you were saying, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, 20 was the worst of all, if I may say, because it was, again, really hot. We had canicule, heat waves. Again, no rain. The thing is that since we had already two hot vintages before 20, the vineyard already suffered, and the deep soil was already very dry, and it did not rain during the winter, not really. So not enough to have water in the soil. So even at the beginning of the season 20, it was already dry, and then we had sun and heat. So it was tough on the vineyards. And so we decided to start the harvest on the 17th of August. So that was crazy for us, really, first time ever that we start so early. So 24th of August, we had finished the harvest. That was okay. but it was really, really important for us to do that. And I think if we have to compare 17, 18, 19, and 20, I would say 17 and 19 are a bit more typical of Burgundy vintages, that more Burgundy typical, more finesse, more elegance, while 18 and 20 are warm vintages. So it's richer, it's more generous, opulent. You say opulent? Opulent?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's all good vintages, that's for sure, but it also depends on your taste and if you want more delicacy in the wine, or if you really like, richer wines. It depends on, and I think all of them will age, even if 20 it's still early to say, of course, but so far, we're pretty sure it will age. And I think the 17 Village, for example, are starting to show really nice now. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, we've got some other very good questions, but I think everyone should start trying their Volnay. And Sarah, I might ask you a couple. Someone suggested you might want a vineyard a little bit further north and cooler, and maybe the south of England would be good.
Exactly, I was going to say that.
One of those things. No, Mr. Morgan, very good. We like that. But also a question from Hugo about do you, having Pommard, Volnay, and Chambol on the reds, in a warm vintage, is one of the villages a little bit more suited to warm vintages, or is that not really a thing?
I wouldn't say it's a thing. It's
Okay.
no, when it's hot, no rain, it's quite the same everywhere. So maybe the thing we see now changing is that where we had vineyards terroirs that used to be a lot very wet all the time and were difficult to ripe, and we had to wait longer to harvest, and it was always a bit lacking a bit of a degree and unbalanced. maybe now they're becoming the terroir that are gonna resist the best. So.
Yeah.
But we don't know, and also many people, many winemakers in Burgundy are wondering about the type of I don't even have the word. The kind of vineyard you plant, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Because depending on the type of selection you do, some work better than others, and some resist to the heat better than others. But maybe it's just like the 5 last vintages have been hot, but maybe the next 5 vintages will not be that hot. And in that case, we will have to rethink the whole thing. So it's tricky. But we noticed some vineyards which are only 10 years old are already suffering a lot from the heat and no rain. So it's a bit of a worry for us. We don't know if the vineyard is gonna go far, or if we're just gonna have to renew it. But 10 years, we shouldn't have to.
As long as there's no hail in Volnay, which is obviously what happened before.
Yeah.
Because the 17 vintage, which we are obviously starting with, was the first proper sized vintage, if we can say that, since really 2009 or 10.
10.
Yeah.
Because then, 11 was mostly wet, but we didn't have any hail. But then we had hail in 12, 13, and 14, 3 years in a row, which I remember my father telling us, no, it's not going to happen a third time in a row. It's never been like that. It used to be like maybe 1 year of hail in 10 years. And then we had 3 years in a row. Okay. And that's just when we arrived with my brother. And then we had 16 with the frost as well. So tough start.
Yeah, exactly. Now we have someone who's put their hand up to ask a question, named iPad 3. I don't know if you
Well, I'm sorry about that. My name's Martin. My name's Martin. I'm very much a beginner, but I'm curious to know how the weather, the time of the rain, how the weather when it's wet affects before the harvest. I've joined late. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, don't worry. Don't worry.
But it's not an important question because I'm just seeing how many intelligent people there are here, so I'll stop talking. But I've already started, I'm afraid, on some Volnay. I'm sorry about that.
No, good. No. We positively encourage it. I think, I mean, Sarah, if you were to have to pick if you were to have to pick when it was still a little bit wet, what effect does that have?
Yes, that's.
I'm not sure what you mean. What vintage?
In each vintage, how do you choose when to start picking? Sorry, I'm very young.
No, it's okay. I understand your question. We do a lot of prélèvements, samples.
Ah oui, c'est ça.
Vineyards, you know. And,
yes.
And we also wait how many.
Pre-selection.
We wait the weight of.
How full the moisture is in the grape? You mean you feel the grape for the weight of it, the heaviness.
The weight and the weight means the quantity of juice we're gonna harvest. You know, so we weight 100 berries.
Yes.
We select 100 berries in the vineyard for a good representation of the whole vineyard. We weight that, and it's really interesting to see that like in 3 days you can lose almost 30% of the weight. So it means you lose a lot of juice, and the more you wait, the more you're gonna lose, and it means basically no harvest in the end. No.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
So you can't go too early because obviously it's not going to be ready.
It's experience. If you have the knowledge, you win. I understand. I think.
Yes, and then it's also a decision at some point you have to make it and hope it's
wonderful.
The best.
Très gentil. Merci.
You're welcome.
So, Volnay 17.
Yay.
I have to say, I really enjoyed it when I opened the bottles and poured glasses out. I don't know, about 5:30, so about an hour ago now. I immediately got a wonderful aroma, so I was very, very impressed. It was lovely, lifted just made me want to drink them all. I've managed to be slightly reserved and not drink them all yet, but yeah, no, very good. Anyway, Sarah.
So this one, Volnay, it's you have the map just here. It's a blend of 11 different vineyards we have, which are all classified Volnay Village. So we decided to make one cuvée with all of them, and it's a good representation of Volnay style. We have 10 vineyards which are down the village, and just one which is up, just near our winery. And yeah, blending all of them allows us to have a good representation of the style of Volnay, of what we think Volnay should be. And Volnay, it really works with our vinification style as well. So we really are looking for the delicacy, the elegance. We have, it's fresh fruits. It's a lot of strawberries, red currants, quite flowery as well, like subtle flowers like violet. And we want it to be a wine that you can easily enjoy. It's not a premier cru, so you don't need to wait too long to drink it. If you wait, we usually say 3 to 5 years, it's perfect. So 17, starting to drink now, it's the good time. I think they're tasting really nice now. And it's a wine that should be really smooth and enjoyable, and yeah, it has complexity, but it's still not aggressive tannins at all. It's really smooth, velvety wine.
It's a lovely snapshot of the sort of cross section of Volnay. It has the perfume and it has the supple, sort of very melded tannins. It's a very nice representation of what Volnay can do as a whole. And then with the Premier Crus, we get into looking at the specific sites.
With Premier Crus, yeah, you have more concentration, of course, because the yields are lower. And then with the Premier Cru, since we vinify separately each of them, you really have the expression of the terroir. While Volnay, we decided to make one cuvée to have a generous Volnay wine that you can enjoy, and it gives you a good idea of what the Volnay should be, I think. It's a good Pinot Noir style.
I would agree. It seems completely pure to me. I think almost Volnay for me is Volnay when it's lovely and ripe and pure like this is almost the classical Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
Would you? What sort of age are the vines roughly that go into here?
Good question.
No, someone asked, so it wasn't my question.
Thank you for asking. No, it's because 17, so the one we're tasting now, is the last vintage in which we regrouped all of our vineyards. And starting on 18 vintage, we decided to separate the old vineyards from the rest, because we are lucky enough to have some really old vineyards, and we thought it'd be really interesting to try to see what the difference was. So we just decided to, at first we just vinified them separately, and then we aged them separately, and then we decided to bottle them because it's really interesting. So the young vineyards are between 30 and 60 years old. And the oldest, we have 3 which are 60 and beyond. So 60, and the very old one is 80. So that's we're really lucky to have old vineyards, and I think it's also a big part of the quality of the wines we're able to produce. So this one, it's still the blend of the young and old vineyards, and starting from 18, we will have the Volnay Village, which is fresh, generous, and easy to enjoy. And then the Vieille Vigne, which is a bit more complex, maybe deserves to age a bit more. And it has some more complexity somehow, but it remains really delicate because it's still Volnay. So yeah, we're glad to see that there is a real difference and a real interest in separating the old vineyards from the rest. And we hesitated at the beginning because they write Vieille Vigne on the labels, but there is no controls over the Vieille Vigne cuvée mentioned. So you can put Vieille Vigne on a 20-year-old vineyard, which makes no sense for us. So at the beginning we were careful about that, but then when we saw the results, we thought, okay, let's go for it. And if we explain the story and that we actually have all the vineyards and that there is a difference when you taste those two. It can be really interesting.
Good.
Shall we move on and look at the Pommard maybe, because it's interesting to compare the Pommard with the Volnay, because obviously the two great red wine villages of the Côte de Beaune, and I think these are two great examples which are interesting to look at side by side.
And the interesting thing for us is that we vinify really the same way, because it's both village level. So for us, we really want only the terroir to express itself. So it's the same vinification, same aging with the same 20% new oak, and it's only the terroir. So the Volnay, it's more fresh fruits and maybe more red fruits, like a bit of acidity, as I said, strawberry, red currant. While Pommard, it's a bit more dark fruits, I think. It's more cherry, black currant, and that's really only coming from the terroir. So that's what's fascinating about Burgundy, and that should be our work, our job, to be able to express the complexity of the terroir and with the same vinification process.
Is the extraction exactly the same with the Pommard and the Volnay? So you don't extract lighter?
No, we're really careful with the extraction, because we make the wines we like, obviously, and we really don't like wines when they're too extracted. And so we, even if it's a Pommard, and for a long time Pommard was considered to be maybe a wine that was a bit austere.
Austere,
yeah.
And now it's evolving a lot with the new generation, I think, and the vinification techniques. And for us, we vinify our Pommard in a Volnay style. And so we end up with the typicity of the terroir of Pommard, but still a wine that's really open, easy to enjoy even if it's young. You still have the complexity, a bit more tannins compared to Volnay. But again, that's the terroir. We're starting to see Pommard that are also really open and enjoyable even when they're young.
Yeah, it's good. I enjoy it. I enjoy both, and I think it's quite good to use your analogy, which I've once used before as well. When people are talking about it, what does extraction mean for those who might be sort of newer to it? Okay. And it is exactly like Sarah talks about making tea. I think tea is a brilliant analogy generally, because you know what it's like if you leave a tea bag too long, you get too much dryness. If you leave it the right amount of time, you get optimum flavor but no dryness. If you were to extract or push the grapes too hard, then you get hardness, and that's over extraction. So I think it's always maximum flavor but retaining purity is what I think everyone tends to be.
The big difference with the tea is that for us, we quite do the tea when we leave it infuse, but for me, the extraction is a bit different, because it comes from when you do the punching down, like when you melt the solid part of the vat with the juice, and when you extract that, that's really what we call the extraction. It's that when we mix it for too long, and then we're going to extract the ripeness from the skin, and that's what we want to avoid. So for us, the technique is to really do a very light punching downs, or sometimes no punching down, depending on the wine, to really try to. It still extracts from the infusion with the skin and everything, but we don't really do the punching down, because it can.
I've thought of a good analogy. So no stirring of the tea bag.
Yeah.
Someone's asked a really good question, which is, you talk about the Volnay being a few different vineyard plots combined. Is that the same with Pommard, and it's a combination, or is it one plot?
It's the same. It's just that it's much only 3 vineyards compared to 11 for the Volnay. It's the ones. Right. I added the blue dots on the map. So it's down the village, on the light pink parts down the village. And we have 3, which are Le Poiseau. This one has a blue dot. Just on top of Le Poiseau, we have Les Comtes Dessous, because that's tricky. We have a part in Les Comtes Dessus, that's Premier Cru. And Les Comtes Dessous, that's Village. You understand?
Yeah.
So we have Les Comtes Dessous, Village, Le Poiseau, and the other one on the other side, Les Riottes. So all 3 are village classified, and we blend them together to make the cuvée of Pommard. So it's really the same as Volnay, but it's much smaller because we only have 3 vineyards compared to 11 on Volnay.
Perfect. I think it's a very good example of the difference between Volnay and Pommard for me. It's a very clear, and I know, and it's actually, this would be the important time to say a little bit about Pommard 18, because a few people have got that. Obviously, most of us have Volnay 17 and Pommard 17, so it's a direct comparison.
Yes, yeah.
And
it's more difficult to compare with 2 different vintages, but yeah, because Pommard is already a bit more. I don't like this expression powerful, but you know, like a bit more full-bodied compared to Volnay, which is a bit more delicate. But if you also add the effect of the vintage with 17 and 18, it's going to be even more the case, because 17 is more delicate, more Burgundy style, and 18 is more rich and a bit more powerful as well. So it's gonna emphasize the effect if you compare the Village Volnay 17 and Pommard 18.
And this is a good time to pick up on one of the earlier questions we had from David, I think it was. 17s are so lovely now and so approachable, but does that, what is your view on the aging of the wine of 17, let's say, in particular, but also if a wine shows so well young, does that mean, do you think that means it will or won't age, or is that, I mean, I have a view, but I would love to hear yours first.
Okay, then you tell us your view.
Okay, well, my view is that wines are all about balance, and so that a wine showing well when it's young tends to mean that the wine is in balance, which actually you maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, you would have wanted a wine to taste almost tannic and too rich, because then it will age well. But I think the new sort of group of producers, of which, you know, Sarah, you're one, and there are loads in Burgundy of you, are making wines that actually have balance from the off. So I don't think there is any lack of ageability to a wine just because it shows so nicely now. That would be my view. But
yeah, I totally agree. Was going to say the same. It's since we have the balance since the beginning, and it shows really nicely today. Also, I think because of the fact that we treat the wine as naturally as possible during the whole vinification and aging process. We don't add anything in the wines. We just use the temperature controls. It's much softer for the wine, more respectful of it. And I think it's also why it shows it's already open already when it's young, but it has a full potential to age, I'm sure of it. 17s will age. It still has some acidity, which is good because you need it to get the wine to age. And I'm sure 17, 18, honestly, it has a lot of potential to age, I'm sure. It has already everything today, and it shows nicely today. But if you keep it for 10 years in the cellar, I'm sure it's going to be a good surprise. Yeah, because it's
as wine merchants, obviously, it would be remiss of me not to suggest, of course, that you buy 2 cases and that you drink one when it's slightly younger and age the other one for later on. But anyway, that's I'm biased.
Well, actually, it's funny because very recently with my brother, we decided to clean our cellar a bit, our father's cellar. And we knew we had a lot of old bottles, but we had no idea really what old bottles we had. So we decided to go for a treasure hunt in the cellar. And we ended up with finding bottles. The oldest bottles we found were from 1937.
Oof.
So it's not bad. Then we don't have all the vintages because of the war. We don't have the vintages of during the war. But then from 70 to nowadays, we almost have all vintage. So and it definitely ages. So some vintages, of course, more than others. But when they're already very complex and very well balanced, and when they're young, I'm sure they age without a problem.
Brilliant. Well, I'm afraid I missed the Zoom presentation of the 1937s by a few years, but, as we all did, I think, probably. the premier cru.
Premier cru, le Ronceret. It's maybe we can see the map of Volnay again. It's going to be easier to understand the terroir. It's right in the middle of Volnay, this terroir. And it's what's interesting is that we usually start the harvest with this one, exactly right in the middle, le Ronceret. And it's always ripe sooner than the others. Centenot and Ronceret always are, while Brouillard, third one we wait a bit longer. And Ronceret, it's again very typical of Volnay, of course more concentrated than the Village because it's Premier Cru, obviously. Also very good potential to age. And this one has maybe a more blackberry aromas. Blackberry. Because Ronceret, it's really interesting, this one, because the name Ronceret, it comes from ronce in French, which is the blackberry bush.
Okay.
So we think a long time ago, before we planted vineyards there, it was just a giant bush of blackberries. And it's really interesting to know that, because when you really take the time to figure it out, it's mostly on every vintage we can taste the blackberry coming back. So on Ronceret, it's really interesting. But
I'm glad somebody asked the question about colour, because when I poured them out this evening, I thought the same thing. The Village Volnay is deeper in colour than the Premier Cru, and I wonder why that is. Do you have an explanation?
Not really. I didn't notice that, but I'm not sure why. I couldn't say, to be honest.
So it's not a rule. I mean,
no.
Your Premier Crus don't tend to be lighter in colour.
No.
I think maybe it's one of these things where people assume that concentration of flavour necessarily means a darker colour, and I don't think that that's classically the case. If I'm allowed to slightly indulge myself, I have one meeting with someone who we represent in Asia, who's now no longer with us, but Gianfranco Soldera, I remember asking at dinner about some Sangiovese, and I said, and I kind of thought I was asking a silly question. I said, so Gianfranco, what do you think about, what does the color tell you in your wines, or in wine generally? And he very quickly just glibed back and he said, color is for idiots. So I'm not quite sure. He was smiling, but I think color, particularly in Burgundy, is very easy way of tricking yourself about things. And it doesn't often tell you enough. And unless you were doing a massive vertical of exactly the same vineyard, I don't think it tells you much. And I've been caught out by it endlessly. You assume a lighter wine is either less concentrated or older.
No, it's different, because the color comes from the anthocyane in the skin. So in some vintages, it makes sense. Like if you compare 17 and the 18, I think the 18 are a bit more deep red, like and it means it's more concentrated, so that works. But in that case, maybe it's just that we had a bit less skin color in the grapes from the beginning, from this vineyard, and in that case, it doesn't mean anything about the concentration.
It's also affected by the level of acidity and the level of potassium in the wine. So there are lots of different things.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it's absolutely beautiful, I have to say.
Yeah, it's showing really well.
I am biased, but I love the Volnay, and then you step up to the Premier Cru and you just see an extra, which is exactly what you should. You just see an extra dimension.
Great. Yeah, and it has a long finish. That's something also I like about Ronceret. It's that it's delicate, it's structured, and it has a very nice finish. So also something that tells you can age it for a few years in the cellar. It's still nice to drink, but this one can age it a bit more. So yeah, Pommard and Volnay Village you can drink, and Ronceret maybe.
What characteristics do you associate with age? So how do you feel? And it's a tricky question, because obviously you and your brother have taken on the Domaine for the last three vintages, but how do you tend to think the wines age? Well, what happens to the wines as they age?
Why do they age, or how do they?
What happens in terms of their character? How do you feel the wines change?
I think instead of the fresh fruits that you can have today, it gets a bit more not cooked fruits. I don't like the idea. It's not like marmalade, but a bit more, yeah, a bit more cooked fruit, and also depending on the terroir, but some empyromatic tastes, like a bit more toasty, chocolate when you get it a bit older. So that's and then the structure, that just gets more velvety with time. So. But yeah, it's hard to tell because there's no exact science about aging wine. So you just have to age and try. But most of the time, yeah, it's mostly the fresh fruit that's becoming a bit more ripe fruit, and then some toasty brioche tastes in the wine.
So of your Rosé, what is the vintage that you think it would be? What would be your pick of vintages to drink today? Which best?
Maybe 15.
Okay.
Yeah. I know I tried. We tried 13 not long ago, but I think 13 can still age, and 15 maybe could be interesting.
Okay.
Also could age because of course they can age, but yeah, and 17 is not so bad for a young wine, but yeah.
We have a rather complicated question come in, which I think is aimed more at Corny and Barrow than at Domaine Glantenay, certainly. But just asking, and I'll deal with it very. I say sorry, deal with it sounds a bit stern. But it's did Corny and Barrow blend other wines into Burgundy to make the colour darker, as is strongly suggested? This is pre-European Union, etc., and we're not going to get onto politics in any way. It's quite interesting. There was lots of stories back in, 50s, 60s, 70s of little bits of Rhone being blended into Burgundy to make the colour darker on some English bottlings. I think it's fair to say that. I don't know the ins and outs because I'm delighted to say I wasn't around. But yeah, it's quite interesting that a company like Calvé, which are quite known for Bordeaux, actually started in the Rhone, shipping Rhone wines around, and therefore there is some sense of that, but I don't know. And it's certainly not going to happen because now it's all about single vineyard. It's all about the expressions of terroir. So yeah.
The last vintages, it's not difficult to get the color because it's so concentrated and so warm vintages. So we don't have to, even if you can't end up without color, it's impossible. Really, exactly. But yeah, well, there's always been rumors about that, but which is why the pre-fermentation with cold temperatures is really important for us, because it's really when we extract the color. And in 18, for example, after 2 days of macerating in the vat with cold temperatures, we could also see a really red color coming. So it's a sign that it's going to be a rich vintage and have some concentration.
And I have a quick question, because you, as with a lot of Domaine in Burgundy, produce both red wines, which obviously we're tasting, and that's 95% of what you do. But how much of a challenge is it to produce white wines alongside reds?
It's not that much of a challenge. We just need more space because the process is very different for the reds and the whites. The whites, it's quite quicker because we press it quickly, and then we just put the juice. We put it in the vat for like 24 hours to débourber, to settle, and then we put that directly in the barrel, and then the fermentation, everything happens in the barrel, and we do the bâtonnage, and that's it. While for the reds, it's much longer, and it spends 1 month in the vat, and you have to do the bumping over and the punching down, and then you have to control the temperatures. So it's a bit more, it's complicated to do the reds. And it's, if you have enough space, you can just do the whites and then do the reds, and it's it's not the same process at all. So for us, we need a lot of equipment for the reds, so we can easily use them for the whites, and it's not a big challenge really.
Okay, no, that makes good sense. So we've got some other questions coming in. I will deal with the just inform people on the prices and things at the end when I sum up in a few minutes. But how long do you age the wines in barrel, generally speaking?
About we age them for about. It depends also on the whites and the reds, of course. What we do is we do 2 bottlings a year. So we bottle the whites and the Bourgogne Pinot Noir first. So those ones we keep for about 10 months in the barrels. Yeah. And then we bottle all the rest of the reds, so except Bourgogne Pinot Noir. And those ones, it's about 15 months.
Okay. No, perfect.
So, and to give you an example, the 19s, we will bottle them in 3 weeks. So for now, we soutiré rack.
Yep.
Rack.
Yep, rack. Yep.
We racked them already, and now they're back in the big vats to be homogeneized.
Yep. Blended
to blend them together, because we have new barrels, and then 1 year barrels and 2 years barrels. So then we have to rack all the barrels, put back in the vat. Again, it settles, and then it just blends together, and then it's ready to bottle. So they're already out of the barrels, but they're not bottled yet.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, well, I think that almost sums up the questions. There was one question that is almost a sort of PhD dissertation type question I noticed from Chris, which is, what's the biggest change in the Burgundy wine industry over your career? And I don't know whether that was, I would imagine, Sarah, that's aimed at you rather than me. And where do you see it in 10 years' time? So it's, as I say, I think quite an essay topic. But I mean, if before Sarah, I give Sarah a couple of seconds to think. From my point of view, having been a sort of Corny and Barry for whatever it is, 20 plus years now, the interest in Burgundy has changed. The amount of time people are really willing to give to tastings exactly like this, to wanting to know more. I think people really trust Pinot Noir and Chardonnay as varietals that show what the difference in soils and the difference in terroirs can mean. And I think people find that fascinating. And at the same time, I think, if you look at the village wines, be it Bourgogne Blanc, be it, a Volnay, be it a Gevrey Chambertin, I think people love to know what they think they're going to get. And I think also that exactly, and Sarah's a very good example of it, the next generation that's coming through are really refining and taking on what Burgundy has always been about, but now with the expertise and with the WhatsApp groups and with the sharing of resource, I think Burgundy's going personally from strength to strength. People can say that at the very top, the prices are getting very, very high, but I would like to think that as this evening has demonstrated, you can get very special bottles at prices that are not, very, very high. And I think that's where I see Burgundy going. And I think the same, people will move to the Macon as well. And I think and Beaujolais, there are some massively interesting wines all over Burgundy. But Sarah, what would be your sort of thoughts on where Burgundy was and where it's going?
It is a tough question. I would say that Burgundy, because it's very small and production is very small and it's never going to get bigger, I think there will always be people asking for Burgundy, so that's definitely not going to change. Then the prices, I'm not sure that's going to change. But also, we have small vintages, so that's not helping when we have small volumes, like a half volume of what we were hoping to do. And then I don't know, what I hope for Burgundy is that it remains what it still is, like very traditional and passed on from generation to generation, and that I think is what protects Burgundy for now, and that's what Burgundy represents. I think it's really a small family estates, and yeah, protected, and not a big amount of different appellations, but winemakers who really know their terroir and are trying to really express the full potential of their terroir. And because it's small, but it's very rich. That's what's really exciting about Burgundy. It's that it's a small area, but it's very complex. And yeah, you can always learn more about Burgundy.
No, that's brilliant. I think I could not agree more. And if we do maybe one last question, because I think it's a very good one from Ashwin, asking if what changes that you and your brother have made are you most sort of proud of or feel have made the most difference?
Well, the first big change for us was the new winery. That was really necessary, and that allowed us to evolve a lot. And thanks to that, we have new equipment, new techniques. I was talking about the temperature controls before, and that's really very important for us. And that's something our father didn't have. So what we gained from that, I think, is the precision in the wines. Our father, he already produced very elegant and delicate wines because it was the wines he liked, and that's the wines we grew up with. So that's now the wines we also are trying to do. But now we are trying also to achieve the precision in the wine, and that's yeah, the precision, the respect of the grapes, and yeah, that's it. I think that's the big difference that we had. And then, of course, all the developments that we add to the Domaine, and the shipping wines all over and the world that our parents didn't do. That's quite exciting.
No, I think, well, that's brilliant. I mean, Guy, do you have any last things to add on the wines before I sort of sum up?
No, I think they've all shown brilliantly true to type. I mean, I think Volnay and Pommard to have side by side have been, that's a real sort of masterclass of two classics of Village Volnay and Village Pommard. And the thing I like especially about the Pommard is that it's elegant and it's pretty, but it's not trying to be too soft and supple. It's still a Pommard. It still has some muscle and it still has some power. And I think that's great. So, you know, it really shows the typicity of the village. And the Ronceray, I think it does have that dark fruited sort of berry character, which is very, very true to that site. So no, I think three really good wines to look at, and the 17s are in a good place. So thank you, Sarah.
Yes, yeah. Well, look, I mean, I think, Sarah, my sort of sincere thanks to you for you know, putting aside an hour for us, which is brilliant. Guy, well done for following up your customer's lead, because I'm delighted you did, and I think everyone will have been very impressed by these. So thank you very much, and well done on that one. We have some more tastings coming up, and you'll get details of those. But what I'd really like to say is, you know, please do look at the hub in terms of buying the wines. The 19s, to give you an idea, the Volnay we had is 170 in bond. The Pommard is 215 in bond, and the Ronceray Premier Cru's 275. And these are the prices for the 19s. We have tiny amounts of 17 and 18, so please form an orderly queue rather for those. But I think really just you know, give us a shout if we can help. But I think these wines are doing exactly what they should and are just really exciting. Please do you know, cork them up and follow them over the next couple of days. I think that's one of the things we've enjoyed about doing Thursday tastings. You know, tomorrow is Friday, so you can get sort of nicely stuck in tonight, but definitely tomorrow as well. Probably worth chilling them overnight, I would say, just to make sure that they you know, last and show as freshly as they can. But yeah, thank you again, Sarah, and we look forward to having you in London for the tastings next year, as long as things are back to normal.
I hope. I can't wait.
Send our very best to your brother and the rest of the family, and everyone else. Thank you very much for being here. If there's any other questions, please let us know. But take good care of yourselves, drink well, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Take care.